If you are addicted to sex or porn and you want some healing, then listen up, because in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly what to do if you are a sex addict. I treat sex addiction for a living. That is my specialty. If you were to ask me what I do, it's that. I've treated thousands of people who are struggling with sex addiction. Believe it or not, I know what it takes to overcome sex addiction. And it's probably not what you think. It's probably a little bit different. So stay to the end and listen to this video, because you'll be surprised at what it's actually gonna take to overcome your sex addiction. I was working with this guy, let's call him Steve, and Steve came to treatment with me after going to treatment with a lot of different therapists for a lot of years. He could not stop acting out in his sex addiction. He would go to massage parlors, he would go to strip clubs, he would look at pornography compulsively, and he couldn't stop it. And he came to me and he expected a lot of the same. Now, what I mean by that is most of the therapists that he went to focused on what he shouldn't be doing. They focused on stopping the behavior. And they set up systems that actually created this white knuckling, this control thing, where he was trying to force himself not to do certain things. And what would happen is he would go a time where he wouldn't act out, he wouldn't do things in his addiction, maybe 3 months. I think he even got 6 months at a time. But then eventually he'd crash and burn, and his addiction would come raging back. And the reason is because the roots of his addiction were not being addressed. The behavior was being addressed, but there's so much underneath that behavior. There's a core to it that needs to be addressed and needs to be healed in order for a sex addiction to go away. Steve went from completely out of control in his life, acting out all the time, to having long-term sobriety. But more importantly than the sobriety, to finding peace again. He found a wife, he's gotten married since, he's happy, they have trust in their relationship, and he doesn't manipulate himself and her, he doesn't lie, and he doesn't act out compulsively. Now, how did that happen? I'm gonna tell you. If you're struggling with sex addiction, then you're gonna wanna subscribe to my channel, so hit that subscribe button below. There is a difference between recovery and sobriety. A lot of times people think if I stop the behavior, then all my problems will go away. Not true. There's a difference between recovery and sobriety. Sobriety is not doing a behavior. Recovery is actually recovering something. What you're recovering is an understanding of who you really are. An understanding that you are loved, you're loved by God, that you are a good person who is lovable. But why don't you believe that already? It's because you've had a lot of experiences in your life, a lot of trauma that has told you otherwise. And you actually believe lies about yourself. And because you believe those lies, you isolate, you disconnect, and you have a life that you really want to numb out. That's what's driving your addiction. So recovery is actually recovering an understanding of who you are. The opposite of addiction is connection. Connection to God, connection to self, and connection to others in a vulnerable way. When you have addiction, you have a lot of shame, and that shame tells you to disconnect. Don't go be vulnerable with others. Don't connect to God, because you're not worthy of love. But the opposite of addiction is connection. So the way out of your addiction is actually starting to live your life in the light. Monsters are much scarier in the dark. When you bring yourself up into the light, then the addiction will shrivel away and die. It can't survive if you're an honest person who can own who you are and who can put yourself out there to the world and connect to others, to God, and to yourself. To live your life in the light, it requires some things. One of the first things that you're gonna want to do is set up your life in a way where you don't wanna numb it out. Just basic balance in your life and inputs that are good are gonna help you not stay stuck in an addiction. So if you hate your job, if you don't like where you live, if life just isn't working for you, you don't have good hobbies, then make some changes. Don't stay stuck in the rut. but actually change the inputs so you can change the outcomes of your life. The next thing that you need is a good, healthy support system. Now, your addiction has probably told you to push away. Don't be too close, maybe to your spouse or your sister or your parents. I challenge you to actually nurture those relationships. Try to be close with people. Try to be honest with people. Instead of hiding who you are and what you're doing, open up about what's going on in your life and connect to them. You need a life of balance. So what that means is if you're overrun with work or spending way too much time playing video games or whatever it may be, then that's a problem. Balance your life out. Have healthy self-care. That's about connecting to yourself. It's about knowing what works for you, what makes you feel good, and what makes you feel alive. And lastly, probably the most important, is face your demons. Now, what I mean by that is if the opposite of addiction is living in the light and connecting to people, what that means is that honesty and courage are the keys to recovery. Now, there's a reason why we live in the dark. We hide from our biggest fears. We hide from things like, I'm not lovable as I am, or I'm not enough. And we try to manipulate the world to not see those things about us. But when you have courage, you face those demons, you face those things that tell you that your identity is that you're not enough, that you're not lovable. So step into your trauma, do work in therapy, face those demons. Don't let those faulty core beliefs dominate you and continue to push your addiction so that you can live in the light, so that you can be an honest person. If you're thinking about living your life in the light and being an honest person, then another video of mine that's going to be helpful for you is how to gain trust back in a relationship. It will help you learn how to live your life even more in the light. So go check it out.